Same thing, May the 1st, 2022, the second part of our conversation. The first one, we have the introduction to this case presenting to the U.S. judicial system at the very first kickoff at the U.S. federal justice, plus the antitrust justice. We will observe that, let's suppose that the situation goes like this. I will use the vectorial analysis as algebra and the interval notation to present this. On 1999, and the idea is timeline, I had my, university activity started. And up to 2014, I had the analysis with the object as core, the laundry money, and all things that goes by this laundering. Because it's the basis of organized crime until the 90s. Since the 90s, we had a new design as organized crime, which involves public checks on the first line. Then we will check that from 2014 up to 2022, we had the presentation as report and analysis about the systemic crime, complained equally by failures integrated by the IMF and the OECD and the UNODC. We will check that here I have this situation as our timeline. Let's suppose economic and finance control. I will put control. The first thing we must have in mind that the control is not the same thing as domain. For instance, you can have the control of things on your company, but as values, all things, but you haven't the domain of things by the use of those values. In the same way, you can have the domain of circumstance, but do not have the control of actions. Because you are not acting in an explicit way, but using your influence as domain. Something like this. And if you have the domain of circumstance, but the control as action didn't, can't be on your hands, despite you have orders and all things. But sometimes, for instance, you have the domain to set a criminal scam, and this criminal scam is to do the intimidation against one specific person, and the action indeed will be under your control until the limit as intimidation, but beyond the things gone out of control. It means that control and domain are different things, despite can be at the same causal relation as timeline, considering a complex event as crimes committed. Then we'll check that here on 2014 up to 2019, I will kind of trying to have my master degree and my master in business administration, and considering another graduation and business, and I could have this, and it's my choice as profession. And it's about the economic and financial control. I was trying to have a prospection about the issues and the arguments, and I was kind of acting by myself, you know, not considering the payment. And on 2018, I had the research as systemic crime, which leads to aggressions and violations, considering the corruption, considering how the corruption impacts our life since individuals until consumers, citizens, and the citizenship, even in an international cooperation explicitly declared. And no, this creates another situation here, which is an activity now considering up to this period as a portfolio was offered to Nate or something like this. As you can observe, you have different things here. First one, my activity, very amateur at this time. The second one, things became a bit more serious. We are working with the census 1999. The census is forward, you know, see? The direction is to this point here. It means that if we put things like this, I will have the situation 1999, the future, and the sense about the future, which is the orientation that will guide my direction. And when I do things like this, indeed I am driving my own academic activity. And on 2014, by the prospection as interest to hear my speech, kind of these people that walks knocking anyone doors, offering things, I was doing this, selling an idea or trying to offer an idea as would like to hear my speech. And by this way, as driving my own academic activity that never had any kind of support in Brazil, I used a mailbox, and maybe I had interest on it to hear this idea by free will, by goodwill, considering just hear this. And maybe observe if the control should be considered a mandatory need to understand things. And after have the aggressions, I'm at the business area, the self-defense. It's not my business. My business, is have things on business. And I will decide even as a free activity, because the business is kind of the competitive argument at your activity. In my case, is the capital asset as intellectual asset violated when you do not allow me to have the freedom of thoughts, the freedom of speech, or apply freely my ways as academic and intellectual results and the creation, and especially segmented by the kind of violation I suffered. I will observe that in a very specific moment, this activity had kind of more intensity as academic activity, which is since 2014, especially 2018 up to 2022. Kind of, I almost have to make a touchdown per day. So, but As you can observe, I have maybe interest in to have the hearing of my speech and ideas. And when you did the violation of this mail account, which presents the idea about control and declared that the self-defense was so much structured that will be offered as a portfolio, industrial, white label, you will put your stamp there. You probably affected those interests in the same way. It's on our mailbox, Mike. You can research on media in the same way, US judicial system. Then, we will check that is this true? Is this presentation about the case ensured by the reality of facts and circumstances? So it's notorious that we have the violation and the control as theory has a value hurted despite not offered as something by price. And in the same way, the portfolio, but the security, for instance, of years involved on it by the interests like the USA as Department of State and Federal Bureau of Investigation have maybe quantification. The area with the aggression going by the corruption as blind eye association with coalitions, changing the victim but having the constant behavior as aggressors on the offenders, we can use the public budget for individualization and regression. And we get the transnational organized crime, even all workflows, and estimated value is as 33 trillion. Pricing, it means the quantification of your aggression is, measured, I would say. Then I will check that in the last 2 years, let's suppose that I'm offered a financial service. This financial service is about a model of security, raising a firewall and having a system. Let's suppose a financial service. This financial service, I will estimate a value, $10 million. And I have another financial service on America that must receive equally $10 million. See? And, for instance, we will have to pay the social medias and something like this. All things legally, and will be kind of like this. So we have 3 different things here. First one, and the unique thing, my academic life. The second one, when my academic life, always self-supported, was offered as an argument, a speech, or something that you must consider hearing, but some areas ignore it. You have the right to ignore this, but you haven't the right to do the aggressions, even by silence. And the first element was the control. The second element is the portfolio as self-defense by failures at the control. And then we will check that the two both will be quantified from my right as compensation. Has a value 33 trillion, considering the estimative as value diverted from transnational organized crime by the public budget Brazil since 1988, concurrent interest by criminal activity, qualification by binary values, The integrated behavior is positive value, -1, with corruption -1 and criminal purple 0, leads to checks at public corruption used in a regular area by criminal purpose or intent. Indeed is a treason if goes at the judicial power, for instance, or the paramilitary organization. And now we have a situation offered because they can't stop these activities, academic activity or things or something like this, as a financial service. And if you had the value of this service, for instance, like this, we probably will have the application of these financial services considering the projection. Which is generally like this, different segments. One area as free zone. I can apply this, for instance, between my company, IBM, let's suppose I have the Department of Finances, the Department of Marketing, failures onto both. I will have my governance, risk and compliance as internal control of IBM, the Federal Bureau of Investigation suggested and placed by me inside the company to firewall the problem. Now the relation between IBM and the AT&T. Failure of to both, the Federal Bureau of Investigation and, for instance, the antitrust, just to have the knowledge of the case and have the application of the law as the firewall. Microeconomy, then we are having the macroeconomy in a micro-conjunctural architecture. Now we will have the Republicans and the Democratic. Failure of to both, I will have the Federal Bureau of Investigation plus the CIA to understand risks against the nation. Now we will have the East and the West, the CIA and the KGB, for instance. Failures on East, failures on West, concurrent area. It means that this model has indeed value. And it's presented, for instance, as a financial service. You consider that can have 10 millions as payment of this activity. The driver is my academic life. The financial service can be presented as something that go by my own and by the support of America as other financial service, 50-50. And they can have the compensation as 33 trillion flowing by an operation named factory, which is a unique payment as anticipation to have the entire paper as legal asset that you will charge and have the coverage by the individualization considering the public budget Brazil, plus we will have the individualization from public budget Brazil. Right? And then I lost my thoughts by the end of the ring. We will finish here and we'll move for the third part and close the presentation.